Scrolling through Reddit late at night, I stumbled upon a long post in a homeschool survivors forum. It's written by a 24-year-old woman who never technically graduated. What follows is her story, and hundreds of strangers responding, some supporting, some defensive, some with stories uncannily similar to hers. This is that thread. I don't know where else to put this. I'm 24, female, still living with my parents because I don't have a diploma, a GED, or any real record of schooling. Meanwhile, my twin brother is married, has a job in tech, and owns a condo. People ask when I graduated, and I laugh it off because the truth is, I didn't. We were pulled from public school around age 10. At first, it was amazing. Seriously. I felt like something out of a wholesome homeschool blog. Long mornings spent reading whatever I wanted, journaling under trees, extending spontaneous family vacations, Thursdays at the co-op doing art classes, Fridays at science exhibits. I thought we were the lucky ones. Then, around what should have been ninth grade, my parents joined a church with a lot of homeschool families. Everything changed almost overnight. They got really into unschooling, which in theory meant we were supposed to choose what we wanted to learn. My twin brother thrived. He picked up programming early and just ran with it. My older brother, now age 26, started dual enrolling at 17 and went to college on scholarships. But for me, unschooling meant something very different because I was a girl. Mom got pregnant again, twin boys. And because I was the only daughter, suddenly I had chores first. And there were always chores. My brothers had chores too, the lawn, the dogs, a few things here and there, maybe 3 hours a week. Mine were 3 hours a day, minimum. By 15, I was basically a living nanny, cooking, caring for newborns, and then another brother after that, all boys, needing their big sister. Anytime I asked about school, it was, learning happens everywhere, or you'll figure it out later, or your calling is to serve the home. My parents paid for classes and tutors for my brothers, never for me. My oldest brother, 2 years older, got into a community college at 17, graduated, started his career. My twin found an online dual credit program and got a degree before he was 20. Still waiting up early. I'm still here. Still waking up early to homeschool my 3 youngest brothers. Twins age 10 and another brother age 8. I grade their worksheets that I never got myself. I pack their lunches for co-op classes I never got to attend. I drive them to activities even though I don't have a high school diploma of my own. Sometimes I read at night after they're asleep, but I'm exhausted. I've been exhausted for most of my life. I want to get a diploma in secret. I want to leave. I'm scared my parents won't let me go because I have something to prove. I'm done with their version of school. Veteran homeschoolers, is this normal? How do I get out? What even counts as graduating at this point? I feel like I missed my whole life. Here's the top comment. This is not normal homeschooling. This is parentification and educational neglect, dressed up as unschooling should empower, not trap. It should inspire curiosity, not assign gender roles. You were used for childcare. You don't need your parents to graduate. You can sign up for a GED yourself. You're an adult. Start there. Don't wait for their permission. OP replies, that's the thing. I don't even know where to start. What if I fail? What if I don't know anything anymore? Commenter says, adults who didn't finish school passed the GED with just a few weeks of prep, especially if they were strong readers as kids. The GED tests don't care about your records. They test reading comprehension, basic writing, basic algebra and geometry, science reasoning, social studies reasoning. You can self-study for free. Khan Academy is a free online program. You don't need your parents' signatures. You don't need transcripts. You don't need anything from them. When you're ready, you walk in, you take the GED, you pass, you walk out. Another commenter says, your story is so familiar it's almost uncomfortable. I was the only girl in a big homeschooling family. Unschooling meant my brothers got coding classes and I got to clean toilets. They used the word character building like a weapon. I took my GED at 21, moved out at 22, got a job as a receptionist, went to community college at 23. You can rebuild your life. It'll be hard, but not impossible. Another commenter says, I want to offer a different perspective as a homeschool dad who knows a lot of good unschoolers. This is not unschooling. This is not homeschooling. This is exploitation. Unschooling means following the child's interests, not assigning the daughter the role of maid and surrogate mother. That's not a philosophy. That's sexism. Please don't blame homeschooling. Blame your parents. Another commenter says, this is educational neglect. In many states, what your parents did is illegal. If you're still being forced to care for minor siblings full time, they could still be reported. You deserve a life. Another commenter said, reporting may be true, but OP needs an exit plan first. People underestimate how dangerous backlash can be in fundamental households. Focusing on finishing the GED and getting income first, then distance. Another commenter says, OP, my situation was almost identical. Even the part about being the only girl and taking care of the 3 younger siblings. My parents told me women don't need diplomas. I didn't know my times tables at age 19. Here's how I got out. I bought a used GED book from Goodwill. Studied after everyone went to bed. Signed up for the test at a library. Told my parents I was volunteering to get out of the house. I passed. I took a job at a coffee shop. I saved money secretly. Then I left. That was 6 years ago. I'm in nursing school now. If I can start at 0, so can you. Another commenter replies, as someone who ran a homeschool co-op for 12 years, I want to scream. The co-op wasn't supposed to be a break for parents to dump all responsibility onto daughters. It was supposed to enrich kids. Please know that what they did to you is not supported by any legitimate homeschool community. Another person says, your idyllic period sounds like before the church got into your parents' heads. Mine did the same. Everything was beautiful until they got deep into biblical womanhood stuff. Then suddenly my brother needed robotics, and I needed to practice being a wife and mother. Everything you're describing is textbook religious control. Another commenter says, you asked what counts as graduating. Here's the truth. In the United States, at 18, you no longer need parents to graduate you from any homeschool. You can issue yourself a homeschool diploma. I personally don't know that this is true, but let's go with it. But the GED is faster, more recognized, and keeps everything clean. You can walk into test centers without parental involvement. They cannot stop you. Another commenter says, I homeschooled 3 kids into adulthood. Real homeschooling takes time, structure, and parental guidance. What you had was labor. You weren't a student, you were staff. You deserved better. OP says, I think the worst part is realizing my brothers didn't even notice. They got everything. Tutors, paid classes, online programs, sports teams, and I got diapers and dishes. And now they all assume I'm just not academic. Another says, that's internalized narrative after years of being told you weren't a priority. Intelligence doesn't disappear. It waits. The burnout and exhaustion you're describing is normal for someone who spent adolescence caregiving. When people say, why didn't you just study? They don't understand chronic sleep deprivation or emotional control or being told your worth isn't service. Be gentle with yourself. Another commenter says, I took the GED at 25, scored in the top percentile, started community college, ended up transferring. I'm finishing my master's now. You're not too late. You're not ruined. You're not behind. You're starting now, and that's okay. A final commenter says, I don't mean this cruelly, but waiting for permission will keep you trapped forever. Your parents benefited from you staying helpless. They won't suddenly tell you, go live your life. You'll have to go without their approval. The thread kept growing. Hundreds of comments from survivors, homeschool veterans, ex-fundamentalists, teachers, former child caretakers, and people who rebuilt their lives after years of neglect. Many told her she wasn't alone. Many reminded her she deserved education, rest, and freedom. And the overwhelming message was clear. It's never too late. You can still graduate. Your life isn't over. You can leave. Even if you start today, if you want. There's an update, OP says, as I was sitting at the kitchen table at 11 p.m. My brothers were finally asleep. I had my GED Prep book open to a chapter on polynomials. I was actually getting it. I felt smart for the first time in a decade. I didn't hear my dad come down the stairs. He didn't say anything at first. He just snatched the book off the table. He looked at the cover like it was a manual on how to build a bomb. Where did you get money for this? Dad asked. Who told you that you needed this? You have everything you need in the scriptures and in this home. She's been on that phone, Arthur, Mom said sheepishly. I told you. She's looking at the world. She's becoming unchaste in her heart. It escalated so fast. They weren't mad about the book. They were terrified of the implication. They called me puffed up. They said my desire to learn was a rebellion against God's design for women. Because I wanted to go to a testing center, a public place with worldly men, they accused me of looking for a way to stray. My mom started weeping, saying I was abandoning my brothers, even though I'd been their primary teacher and caregiver for 6 years. My younger brother Caleb woke up from the screaming. He was standing in the hallway crying, and my dad pointed at him and said, Look at what your pride is doing to this family. That was it. I realized if I stayed, I wasn't helping my brothers. I was showing them that this behavior was okay. I grabbed my keys and the one bag I had packed, just in case. Here's the part that makes my blood boil. As I was throwing my bag into the car, he pulled into the driveway. Let's call him Mark. He asked, Where are you going? Your dad called me. He said you've lost your way. I looked at him, thinking he might help me. I told him I just wanted my high school equivalency. I told him I wanted to be able to support myself. Mark didn't look concerned, he looked angry. He told me, I've waited 2 years, since you were 22, for you to be of age for our family's agreement. They said we could get married when I was 30 and you were 26. I did the math. By then, my youngest brother would be old enough to learn on his own. I'm not marrying a woman who thinks she's more educated than her husband, Mark said. If you take that test, you're choosing a book over a family. And that's when it clicked. He was the one who told them. He'd seen a notification on my phone a week ago when he was helping me with a chore. He felt threatened. He wanted a helpmeet who didn't know enough to realize she deserved better. I didn't even argue. I just got in the car. As I backed out, Mark was standing there with my parents, and my dad was clearly on his phone, probably calling the police to report the car stolen. I drove straight to my grandparents' house, trembling so hard I could barely steer. I kept thinking Mark didn't want a partner. He wanted a 4-year countdown to a captive. I didn't even turn off the headlights when I pulled into my grandparents' gravel driveway. I just sat there, clutching the steering wheel until my knuckles were white. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I was 24 years old, and for the first time in my life, I had run away. My grandma opened the door before I even knocked. She didn't ask questions. She just saw my face, saw the one bag in my hand, and pulled me inside. My grandpa was already standing there, holding a mug of tea, looking at me with those steady, quiet eyes. I told them everything. The GED book, the way Mark looked at me like I was a broken appliance he didn't want to buy anymore. But mostly, I told them about the car. See, my parents had convinced me for years that the car was theirs. They drive it, but they used it as a leash. If I didn't finish the housework, I couldn't have the keys. If I didn't homeschool my brothers to their satisfaction, the car stayed in the driveway. The sound of a distant siren grew louder, then stopped. Blue and red lights flickered against the window. It didn't even take 45 minutes. My father doesn't play fair and he doesn't wait. When those blue and red lights started bouncing off the living room walls, I felt like I was going to throw up. I actually retreated into the kitchen, hiding like a child. My grandpa, though, he just sighed, stood up, and walked to the front door. I peered around the corner. 2 officers were standing there. "Evening, sir," the officer said. "We're here regarding a silver sedan reported stolen about an hour ago from an author." "Is that so?" said Grandpa. "Well, that's funny, officer, because that car is sitting right there in my driveway, and last I checked, you can't steal something you already own." My grandpa didn't just have the keys. He walked over to his roll-top desk and pulled out a yellow folder. He'd kept everything. "I bought that car for my granddaughter's 21st birthday. Here is the original bill of sale from the dealership. And here," he tapped a piece of paper, "is the registration. It's in her name, not her father's. I made sure of that 3 years ago." One of the officers took the papers and looked them over with a flashlight. He looked almost embarrassed. "Sir, the caller claimed the vehicle was taken by an unauthorized driver who was mentally unstable." I felt the ring of that all the way in my soul. My own father told the police I was unstable just to get a car back. "She's right there. She's perfectly fine. She's just tired of being a live-in nanny with no future. You can tell Arthur that if he calls again, I'll be the one filing a false police report and harassment." When the lights faded and the officers left, I finally collapsed onto the sofa. My grandpa sat next to me and handed me that tea. It was lukewarm by then, but it was the best thing I'd ever tasted. "You're welcome to stay here," she said. Lights faded and the officers left. I finally collapsed onto the sofa. My grandma sat next to me and handed me that tea. It was lukewarm by then, but it was the best thing I'd ever tasted. "You're welcome to stay here," she said, "and tomorrow we will discuss how to get you started living your own life." I realized then that my parents hadn't just lost a daughter that night. They had lost their grip. But the betrayal from Mark, that stayed with me. He didn't just want me. He wanted me limited. I looked at my GED book, sitting on the coffee table where I dropped it. It was a little scuffed from when my dad snatched it, but the pages were all there, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid to open it. I am currently tucked into bed at my grandparents' house, wondering what happens next. But tonight, I can breathe. We have a few comments. "I am literally weeping. The moment with the police and your grandpa pulling out the yellow folder is one of the most powerful things I've ever read. Your father is a monster for calling the police and claiming his own daughter is mentally unstable just to get a car back. That's not love, that's ownership. You did the right thing. Stay safe." Another commenter said, "As someone from a similar background, the betrayal by Mark is a gut punch, but it's a blessing in disguise. He showed you exactly who he is. A small, insecure man who wanted a captive, not a wife. You dodged a bullet the size of a condo. That little scuffed GED book is your ticket to freedom. Never look back." "Interestingly," someone replied, "I cannot stand with you on this. You are dishonoring your father and mother. Scripture is clear. To leave your home in the dead of night and cause such public scandal is a wicked act of rebellion. You are not free. You are lost. That diploma will not save your soul. Your calling is to serve your family, not run from it. Repent and go home before it is too late. The final commenter said, please ignore the shame comments. What you endured was parentification and exploitation, not schooling. Your father's panic over the car proves it was a leash. He knows he just lost his domestic staff and his veneer of control. You are 24, fully entitled to pursue your education, and your only duty is to yourself. We have an update. I have to start a new thread. My extended relatives took over the last one. I thought the distance would be enough. I thought that by moving 30 minutes away and changing my phone number, I had built a wall they couldn't climb. But I forgot that in a small town, privacy is just a suggestion. And my parents have spent 20 years building a network of people who think monitoring your children is a spiritual gift. It started with the Reddit thread. I didn't think it would go viral. I just wanted advice on how to buy a GED book without a credit card. But suddenly it had 30,000 upvotes. Someone in our church circle recognized the details, the homeschooling, the car, the specific way my father talks. By Tuesday, my Aunt Sarah's inbox was flooded. My parents' friends were calling her a kidnapper. But then the tide turned. My other aunts and uncles, the ones who had stayed quiet for years, started reading my post. They saw the educational neglect written out in black and white. A civil war broke out in my family. My Uncle David actually got into a shouting match with my dad in a grocery store, telling him he was starving his daughter's mind. My parents didn't repent, they doubled down. They went to their pastor who had me disfellowshipped in absentia. They told the congregation I had been seduced by the world and that I was living a life of shameful immodesty, all because I was wearing leggings and learning long division. So here's a recap. I need to tell you why I left. People see a 24-year-old woman living with her grandparents and they assume she's failing at life. They don't realize that for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't a daughter. I was an unpaid nanny, a cook, and a ghost. My childhood wasn't always like this. From age 10 to 13, my mom was my best friend. We lived in jeans and Planet t-shirts. We spent Tuesdays at the library and Fridays at the Science Museum. We were part of an arts co-op. I was happy. I was learning. But then my parents fell into an ultra-religious, isolationist crowd. The museums were replaced by apologetics. The jeans were replaced by denim skirts. In my education, I was the first sacrifice they made. They told me God gave me a daughter's heart so I could help my mother with my youngest brothers. For 10 years, I taught them their ABCs while my own brain felt like it was starving. 2 weeks ago, I bought a GED Prep book with saved change. I was confronted by my enraged parents who made wild accusations, and it turned out they were informed by my crush, who my parents had, unbeknownst to me, promised me in marriage. I drove to my grandparents' house, shaking so hard I could. Oh my God. I drove to my grandparents' house, shaking so hard I could barely steer. 30 minutes later, the blue and red lights were bouncing off the living room walls. The police were there for the stolen car. My father had told them I was mentally unstable, but my grandpa pulled out a yellow folder and handed it to the officers. But my grandpa pulled out a yellow folder and handed the officers the bill of sale and the registration. He had bought that car for me 3 years ago, and it was in my name. So, the next morning I woke up in my grandparents' guest room. The sunlight felt different. It didn't feel like a deadline for chores. It felt like the morning. Before I could even finish my first cup of coffee, there was a knock at the door. It was my dad's sister, my Aunt Sarah. I hadn't seen her in 3 years. My parents had cut her out completely because she dared to suggest I should have gone to college when my twin brother did. I saw the Reddit thread, honey, she said. Your cousin sent it to me. So sorry I didn't fight harder for you back then, but I'm fighting now. Aunt Sarah took me to her house. My cousin Maya is away at grad school, but she'd called ahead and told me to raid her closet. I stood in front of Maya's mirror, clutching a pair of colorful leggings and a short patterned dress. My entire life, I've been told that my body was a stumbling block. I wore long, heavy denim skirts and oversized, high-necked tops that made me feel like a ghost in my own skin. I put on the leggings. I put on the dress. It hit just above my knees. I looked like a 24-year-old woman, not a servant, not a helpmeet in training, just a girl. Aunt Sarah said, "You look like yourself, and you look bright." For the first time, I didn't feel ashamed of being seen. I felt visible. Here are a few comments. The simple revolutionary act of putting on a pair of leggings. You are never a ghost OP. They just kept you in an oversized sheet. You are visible now. This is the moment you get your life back. I remember that exact feeling. Being told your body is a stumbling block is just a way to make you feel perpetually ashamed. That dress isn't shameful. It's a uniform of freedom. Raid that closet, sis. Maya is doing the Lord's work. It's never too late to have the adolescence they stole from you. Wait, dress that hits above the knee is shameful and modesty? That's not Christianity. That's controlling patriarchal garbage dressed up in scripture. Your worth isn't in the length of your skirt. The fact that a simple dress makes you feel visible proves how small they try to make you. You are a person, not a vessel to be covered. You can't run away from your calling. Your mother and father will always be your parents, and your place is in the home. You have created a huge public scandal and put your soul in danger just for vanity and world affirmation. That dress is a symbol of rebellion, not freedom. Your visibility is a dishonor to your entire family. Repent. It didn't feel like a deadline for chores. It just felt like mourning. This is a whole thesis on trauma recovery. That shift from duty to existence is profound. You are safe. You are loved. Aunt Sarah is a godsend. The fact that Aunt Sarah was cut off for daring to suggest college proves the isolation was the point. This isn't about education, it's about control. Good on her for showing up and fighting now. The clothing is a minor detail, but the feeling of being seen for who you are is a major victory. Keep going, OP. Please reconsider your choices. The world you are running toward is cruel and unforgiving. Your aunt and cousin are leading you away from the safety and protection of your family and church. The temporary feeling of hope will fade, and you'll be left with the consequences of your disobedience. Stop before it's too late. My favorite detail. I looked like a 24-year-old woman. What a beautifully simple, heartbreaking, and inspiring realization. You are finally allowing yourself to be your age. The best revenge is living well. LP made another post. Aunt Sarah is a retired teacher, and she doesn't mess around. Every morning at 9 a.m., we sit at her dining table. No distractions, no crying brothers, no educational neglect. We started with Algebra on Khan Academy. At first, I cried because I felt so behind. I feel like a failure. But Sarah just handed me a tissue and said, "You aren't behind, you were held back. There's a difference." After a month, I finished the entire algebra track. My brain felt like it was finally waking up from a long sleep. To celebrate, Sarah started taking me to the local community theater. They specialize in classical works. Shakespeare, Sophocles, the heavy stuff my parents called worldly vanities. We chose my reading list based on whatever show was coming up next. Right now, it's A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I've been reading Helena's lines over and over. There's a line that says, I am my mistress of my own self. It hits me like a physical blow every time. Last night, we stayed after rehearsal to talk to the director. He told me they were still looking for ensemble roles and that I should audition. Why not? Asked Aunt Sarah. You spent your whole life playing a part someone else wrote for you. Why not play one you actually choose? I'm terrified. My hands shake just thinking about standing on that stage. And then I remember Mark's face in the driveway and my father's voice on the phone with the police. They wanted me quiet. They wanted me hidden. So maybe the best way to move forward is to stand in the spotlight and speak loud enough for the back row to hear me. I tried to ignore it. I focused on A Midsummer Night's Dream. I actually got cast. Just a small role, a fairy in Titania's court. But I felt like a queen. I had 3 lines, and I practiced them until I could say them in my sleep. Opening night, I was backstage, peeking through the curtain, feeling the rush of adrenaline, and then I saw them. 3rd row, center. My father, my mother, and Mark. They weren't there to watch a play. They were sitting there with their arms crossed, stone-faced, looking like they were at a funeral. Mark was staring at the stage with this terrifying, possessive glare. During the intermission, I tried to hide in the dressing room, but they didn't wait for me to come out. My father actually walked toward the stage area. He didn't yell. He used that authority voice, the one that used to make me physically shake. We're here to take you home, Father said. This ends tonight. You've had your little rebellion. Now think of your brothers. Mark stepped up behind him. He looked at my costume, a simple dress with some glitter and flowers, and he actually sneered. You look ridiculous, he said. You're 24 years old playing dress up while your mother is at home weeping. I'm willing to overlook this, but we're leaving now. He reached out to grab my arm. He didn't grab it hard, but it was that guiding touch, the one that says, I own your direction. I looked at my Aunt Sarah, who was rushing down the aisle. I looked at the director, who was looking for security. And then I looked at Mark. I didn't scream. I just stepped back out of his reach. I'm not on a display, Mark. And I'm not a hostage. I'm a fairy in Act 2. And I have a GED exam on Monday morning. I turned to Dad and said, if you don't leave this theater, I'm calling the same officers who laughed at your stolen car report. The look on my father's face. He looked like I had slapped him with a Bible. He realized that he didn't have a daughter anymore. He had a woman who knew her rights. They were escorted out, but the mess didn't end there. As they left, my father shouted that I was dead to the family. That night, after the adrenaline of the standing ovation wore off, I was sitting in my aunt's kitchen and I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was a photo. It was a picture of the fire pit in our backyard. In the middle of the flames was a charred, unrecognizable lump of gray fur. It was Barnaby. He was a stuffed rabbit my grandfather had given me when I was 5 years old. Long before my parents went down the rabbit hole of this strict, isolated lifestyle, Barnaby was the only thing I had left from a time when it felt normal. I had left him on my bed because I'd rushed out with only one bag, thinking I'd be back to get the rest of my things eventually. Then a second text came through. It was from my younger brother, Caleb, using a burner phone he'd hidden. Dad gathered us around the fire. He said he was purging the idols of your rebellion. He said we aren't allowed to say your name anymore. He says you're dead to us. I sat there and cried, not for the rabbit, but for the fact that my father would rather burn a bridge and a childhood memory than admit his daughter is a person with a brain. On Monday, I walked into that testing center. My eyes were a little puffy, but my head was clear. I passed every section. I didn't just pass, but I got a college-ready score in language arts. I'm free. I have my papers. I have my aunt. But every time I close my eyes, I see that fire. I realize now that getting myself out was only the first half of the battle. Now I have to figure out how to get my brothers out before he starts burning their things too. Comments. Your brothers are not suffering from a lack of arithmetic. They are suffering from the absence of their big sister's godly influence. You were given the sacred task of raising them in the faith, and you traded it for leggings and a theater stage. I had to create an account just to say this. This is the proof that real love wins. It wasn't the diploma that set you free. It was your grandpa's yellow folder and the car keys. You are a mistress of your own self, and that is more powerful than any curriculum. Okay, update. It's been 3 months since the fire pit incident. I'm officially enrolled in my first 2 community college classes, English composition and psychology. My aunt Sarah is beaming, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm breathing oxygen instead of dust. But the news from home, it's messy in a way I didn't expect. My mother always held up my early education as the gold standard of why she was a superior parent. She'd tell the ladies at the church how I was reading Dickens at 12 and mastered Latin roots by 14. What she conveniently forgot is that I was the one who had sought those books out. I was the one who stayed up late to teach myself so I could eventually teach my brothers. Now I'm gone. The academy has collapsed. I still get messages from my cousins and a few neighbors who haven't blocked me. They tell me it's chaos. My mother is distraught. She spends most of her days in her room praying for my soul, which is just code for being too depressed to function because her live-in housekeeper and co-teacher quit. Without me there to create the lesson plans, grade the papers, and keep the boys on schedule, my brothers have reverted to what my parents are calling unschooling. But it's not the educational philosophy. It's just nothing. My 10-year-old twin brothers are spending 6 hours a day playing with sticks in the woods. The 8-year-old hasn't picked up a phonics book in weeks. My mother is so paralyzed by the shame of my departure that she stopped trying to guide them at all. She can't recreate the idyllic experience she had with me because she didn't realize that I was the one creating it for her. Here's a comment. This part is a gut punch validation. She didn't realize that I was the one creating it for her. Yes, you weren't a student. You were the teacher, the nanny, and the administrator. Her gold standard was a mirror, and you were the one holding it up. Your absence is proof of their fraud. Stand strong. Your pride has brought this chaos on your family. Your mother is sick with grief, and your brothers are now being raised without any proper structure because you abandoned your post. You have chosen 2 worldly college courses over your sacred duty to your home. Your father's call is an opportunity for repentance, not an attack. Go home and perform the godly charity he asked for before it is truly LMAO. Unschooling has become 6 hours a day playing with sticks in the woods. That's not a philosophy, that's straight up child neglect. Update. Father is panicking. He's a man who cares about one thing above all else: appearances. At church, people are starting to ask why the boys look so unkempt. For years, I was the veneer. I was the proof that their lifestyle worked. Without me, the neglect is visible to the naked eye. I got a voicemail from him last night. His voice wasn't booming this time. It sounded desperate. Your mother is ill, he said. The boys are suffering. If you have any godly charity left in you, you'll come home for a few hours a week to help with their lessons. We can move past the theater stuff. He didn't say I'm sorry. He didn't say I shouldn't have burned your things. He didn't say I'm sorry. He didn't say I shouldn't have burned your things. He just wants his free labor back because the gold standard homeschool he bragged about is being exposed as a fraud. I looked at my psychology textbook. I thought about my brothers and the way they're being left behind, just like I was. My heart aches for them. But I know the trap. If I go back for a few, like that just says he just wants his free labor back. Stand strong, OP. This voicemail is not a cry for a daughter. It's a desperate cry for a domestic staff because its gold standard lie is being exposed at church. You are an adult with a psychology textbook in your hand. Do not trade that for his shame and return to a cage. Your heart aches for him, and that is a credit to your character. But you know the trap. If you go back even for a few hours, you will be sucked back in and lose your freedom and your college. Stay strong. You are not abandoning them. You are showing them that escape is possible. They will follow your light when you are shining, not when you are trapped again. Update. I found an old photo at my Aunt Sarah's house. It was me at 11 years old, standing in front of a giant T-Rex skeleton at the Science Museum. I'm wearing jeans, a t-shirt with a planet on it, and a smile that actually reaches my eyes. People think my family was always like this. They think we were born into the long skirts and no education rule. But they're wrong. From the time I was 10 until I was 13, our life was beautiful. My mom used to be my best friend. We were part of this vibrant arts co-op. We spent our Tuesdays at the library and our Thursdays at the park with other families. We studied Shakespeare because it was fun, not because it was a rebellion. We did real science. We lived in the world. And then the shift happened. I don't know if it was a midlife crisis or a search for certainty, but my parents fell in with an ultra-religious, isolationist crowd. Slowly, the science museums were replaced with apologetics. The jeans were replaced by denim skirts. The co-op friends were labeled worldly. And my education, that was the first thing they sacrificed on the altar of their new life. Now I'm gone, my mother is trying to recreate those idyllic years with my brothers. She's trying to go back to the museum trips and reading marathons, but it's not working. You see, back then she was doing it out of love. Now she's trying to do it out of spite. She wants to prove to the aunts and uncles and to the world that she doesn't need me. She wants to prove that she's still that great homeschool mom. But she's not that woman anymore. She spent 10 years training herself to be small, to be submissive, and to fear information. She's lost her spark. My cousins tell me the boys are miserable. She tries to read to them, but she starts crying halfway through. She tries to take them to the museum, but she gets convicted by the exhibits and leaves early. It finally hit me why she's so distraught. It's not just that she misses me. It's that I was her last connection to the woman she used to be. When I was there, I held the house together. I kept the spirit of our old life alive in a way that I taught my brothers. Without me, she's just a woman in a long skirt, staring at a curriculum she's forgotten how to teach, and a house that feels like a tomb. My father's voicemail asking me to come back for a few hours wasn't just about labor. It was an admission. He can't fix her, and he can't fix the boys. They've built a cage so tight that even they are suffocating in it. A commenter says, he just wants his free labor back. Don't fall back in. The voicemail is not a cry for a daughter. It's a desperate cry for domestic staff because its gold standard lies being exposed at church. You're an adult with a psychology textbook in your hand. Do not trade that for his shame and return to the cage. Your heart aches for them, and that is credit to your character. But you know the trap. If you go back even for a few hours, you will be sucked back in and lose your freedom and your college. Don't fall back in. You are not abandoning them. You are showing them that escape is possible. You can't save them if you are trapped with them. Update. Aunt Sarah set me down last night. She saw me looking at that photo of the Science Museum. She said, "You can't go back and be her teacher, honey. You have to be her wake-up call." So I did it. I didn't just call the superintendent. I wrote a letter to my mother. I didn't fill it with anger. I filled it with the Science Museum. I reminded her of the girl in the planet t-shirt. Mom, you taught me to love learning when I was 11. You can't be mad at me for still loving it at 24. But you are letting my brothers wither. If you love them the way you loved me back then, you'll let them go to a great school. Because right now, you aren't protecting them. You're just hiding them. I don't know if she'll read it. I don't know if she'll burn it like my father burned Barnaby. But as I walked to the mailbox, I realized I'm not just studying for my own future anymore. I'm studying so that when my brothers finally get out, I'm the one who knows how to lead the way. So I posted the update about my mom losing her grip on the homeschooling. I told the thread about the unschooling disaster and my dad's desperate voicemail asking me to come back and fix the mess they made. I thought people would be happy I was in college. I thought they'd be proud of my GED scores. But when I refreshed the page an hour later, the comment section was exploding. And it wasn't just congrats. Commenter 1, OP, stop. Read that voicemail again. Your father isn't asking for charity. He is asking for a servant. Do not go back. Not for an hour, not for 5 minutes. It's a trap to get you back under their roof where they can take your keys again. Commenter 2. As a former teacher, unschooling is a valid philosophy when done right. What your parents are doing is educational neglect. If they can't read or do basic math, they are being handicapped for life. You aren't betraying your family by reporting this. You are saving your brother's futures. Commenter 3. Wait, your dad burned your childhood stuffed animal to purge your memory? That is abusive, controlling behavior, OP. You are worried about their reputation at church, but you need to worry about those kids. Call the school board now. Commenter 4. The I is dead, OP. Your mom isn't that woman from the Science Museum anymore. She's an enabler. If you don't report them, you are participating in the same cycle that kept you trapped until you were 24. Be the person for your brothers that you wish someone had been for you. I just sat there in the dark of my aunt's guest room, scrolling through hundreds of messages. For years, I thought I was being loyal by staying quiet. I thought I was the only thing standing between my brothers and total ignorance. But commenter 4 was right. By fixing the homeschool for my parents all those years, I was the mask they wore to look like the perfect family. I looked at the letter I had written to my mother, the one about the Science Museum and the Planet t-shirt. I realized it was too soft. It was a letter written to a ghost. My mother wasn't that person anymore, and my brothers didn't need a trip down memory lane. They need an intervention. I didn't send the letter to my mother. Instead, I printed a copy of my Reddit thread, all the details of the neglect, the lack of curriculum, the ages of my brothers, and the fact that my 10-year-old brother hasn't seen a math book in a year. I walked into the living room where my Aunt Sarah was reading. Sarah, I said, you fight for me. Does that include helping me make a report to the Department of Education? Because I can't let my brothers' lives burn in that fire pit along with my things. Aunt Sarah didn't even hesitate. She just stood up and grabbed her car keys. I've been waiting for you to ask. Let's go. So it's done. The report is filed. I'm terrified of what happens when the social worker knocks on that door. My father is going to know exactly who called. Mark is going to come for me. For the first time in 24 years, I don't care. It happened on a Tuesday. The report I filed with Aunt Sarah wasn't just a tip, it was a roadmap, because I knew exactly where the curriculum wasn't. The truant officer didn't just do a drive-by. They showed up with a warrant for an educational assessment. From what my cousin heard, my father tried to bar the door. He shouted about parental rights and religious freedom. But when the officer saw that my 10-year-old brother couldn't tell him what 7 times 6 was, the religious freedom defense hit a brick wall. The state gave them 30 days to enroll the boys in a certified program, or they'd face a removal hearing. A commenter replied, "This is an abomination. To weaponize the state against your own father is a heinous act. Parental acts and religious freedom are the defense. You are a viper who has brought the secular world into a sacred home. Your brothers will be far worse off being indoctrinated by a certified program than they were in the peace of their own home. Repent of this wicked legalism." Someone else replied, "Your pride and desire for worldly affirmation have led to the destruction of your father's testimony and the persecution of his faith. The state has no authority in the spiritual rearing of children. This is a cruel victory, OP. You have betrayed your family, and you will live with the consequences of tearing your own home apart for the sake of secular curriculum." Another commenter said, "I love the detail that your father tried to bar the door. The man who called the cops on his own daughter for her own car is now trying to argue with the warrant. The tables have turned and the law is now on your side. Go get that certified program for your brothers." My father didn't go to the school board. He came for me. I was walking to my car after my psychology 101 lecture when I saw them. My father and Mark. They were leaning against my car, the car my father had tried to report stolen. Seeing them there in my safe space made my stomach turn. "Look at you, wearing pants," Mark said, stepping forward. "Carrying books like you're something special. Do you have any idea what you've done? The elders are talking about excommunicating the whole family because of the shame you brought on us." Father said, "You've invited the government into our home. You're a Judas. You betrayed your brothers to the state." I felt the old cold fear rising. That instinct to look at my shoes and apologize. But then I looked at Mark. He looked small. He didn't look like a husband. He looked like a bully who was losing his favorite toy. I said, "I didn't betray my brothers. I gave them a chance to read. And if you don't get off my car, I'm calling campus security. There are cameras everywhere here. Dad, you aren't in the living room anymore." They left, but the look in my father's eyes was pure ice. He told me I was dead to him, truly dead this time. I drove back to my grandparents' house, shaking. I expected to find my Aunt Sarah or my grandpa. Instead, I found a woman sitting on the porch swing in the rain. She was wearing a denim skirt that was frayed at the bottom and a sweater that was pilled and thin. It was my mother. She had driven herself. She didn't even have a coat. I walked up the stairs, and for the first time in years, she didn't look at me with judgment. She looked at me with a terrifying kind of clarity. With her voice trembling, she said, "They told me it was a blessing. When I had the second set of twins, and then the baby, my body was breaking and I couldn't do it. I told the pastor I couldn't do it anymore." She started crying. Not the manipulative guilt crying I was used to, but a deep, hollow sob. The church elders told me I was being unfaithful. They said God gave me a daughter so that I wouldn't have to choose between my health and my duty. They convinced me that using you was God's plan for your life. They told me that by keeping you home, I was protecting your virtue. but I was really just protecting my own survival. She confessed everything. How my father and the church had shut her down every time she tried to speak up for my education. How they'd used her exhaustion as a cage for both of us. She wasn't just my jailer. She was a prisoner who had been told her only job was to make sure I didn't escape the cell next to hers. When the truant officer came, she said, I felt relieved. I watched your father scream, and for the first time, I didn't feel submissive. I felt disgusted. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, charred piece of gray fluff. It was a foot from my rabbit Barnaby. She had pulled it out of the fire after my father went inside. I can't go back there. I don't know where to go, but I can't be the person they want me to be anymore. My Aunt Sarah didn't give my mother a choice. When my mom showed up on that porch, broken and holding a piece of my burned childhood, Sarah just grabbed a suitcase and said, You aren't going back to that house to be a doormat for a man who burns his children's memories. My aunt moved my mom into her guest room, but she insisted I go back to my grandparents' house for the night. She told me, You've been her caretaker for years. You need to be her daughter right now, not her crutch. Let me handle her. So I'm back at my grandparents', staring at the ceiling, wondering if the world is ending. And then my phone vibrates, and then again and again. The comments are flooding in. Commenter 1 says, I am literally crying. The mother was being bred by the church, and the daughter was the auxiliary wife doing all the labor. This is a classic cult tactic. Commenter 2 said, Lil P, protect your mom, but set boundaries. She's a victim, but she was also your primary abuser for years. This is a lot to process. Commenter 3 said, the irony. The church tried to use OP to keep the mother in line, and now OP is the one showing the mother the exit. Commenter 4 said, where are your older brothers? They were also victims of the patriarchy, just the beneficiaries of it. They got the education, you got the calling. It's not an excuse, but it's the explanation. Now the question is, will they use their privilege and diploma to fight for you? Or will they go back to looking away? Time to earn that brother title, Liam and Ethan. OP responds, funny you should ask that. My older brothers, Liam and my twin Ethan, had been out for years. Because they were boys, they were allowed to go to college. They were allowed to have careers. They've been living in the city, and honestly, we haven't talked much. I think they felt guilty seeing me stuck at home, so they just looked away. But they saw the Reddit thread. My cousin had sent it to them. They're seeing the word neglect next to our family name, seeing the photo of the fire pit. It finally broke their silence. Ethan called me first. His voice was shaking. My twin said, I thought you liked being at home. I thought you wanted to be the virtuous daughter. I had no idea they were holding your transcripts hostage. I had no idea about Mark. I'm 10 minutes away from Dad's house. I'm picking up the boys. Then Liam messaged the group chat he had just started. Dad is losing it. He's calling me, saying the state is kidnapping the boys. I told him if he doesn't want the truant officer in and sign the enrollment papers, I'm calling a lawyer to file for third-party custody. I have a guest room. Ethan has a couch. The boys are not staying in that house tonight. The commenters agreed. Top comment was, finally, the brothers are stepping up. It's about time. They got to have lives while OP was essentially a child bride in waiting for the family friend. They owe her this. Commenter 2 said, this is the F around and find out phase of homeschooling neglect. When the older kids who did get an education realize the younger siblings are being intentionally stunted, it's over for the parents. So Ethan stayed on the phone with me while he pulled into the driveway. I could hear my father screaming in the background about the covenant of the home and the rebellion of Korah. Dad said, you're taking your brothers? You're taking them into a world of sin? Ethan said firmly. Ethan replied firmly, "No, Dad. I am taking them to a world where they can read a menu." "Liam is on the way. We are taking the boys for the weekend while Mom recovers at Sarah's. You can either help them pack, or you can explain to the police officer standing at the end of the driveway while you're obstructing a truant officer's orders." My father didn't know the police were actually there, and Sarah had called in a keep the peace request. At 11 p.m., I got a picture from Liam. It was my 3 younger brothers sitting in the back of his SUV. They looked terrified, but they were clutching bags of McDonald's like it was a feast. Caleb was holding a library book Ethan had brought him at a gas station. My family is officially scattered. My mom is with my aunt. My younger brothers are with my older brothers. I'm with my grandparents. And my father, he's in that big, silent house with nothing but his convictions and an empty fire pit. He wanted us to be a unit. He wanted us to be a single story. Well, he got his wish. We're finally all on the same page. It's just not the page he wrote for us. Commenter replied, "Finally, it's about darn time." The fact that Liam and Ethan needed to see a viral thread to wake up to the decade of educational neglect and abuse you suffered is tough. But they did the right thing in the end. Stepping in with a truant officer and keeping the peace request is using their privilege correctly. They owe you this, and they're finally paying up. Of course, someone replied, "The adult sons have now joined in the wicked rebellion of their sister. You are all destroying the sacred covenant of the home. Liam and Ethan should be supporting their grieving father, not helping the disobedient sister of the family unit, and subjecting their younger brothers to secular online schooling. God commands honor, not this public scandal and family destruction." Fortunately, all the other commenters call them heroes. We don't hear from Anne again until a whole year later. Before I give you the final update, I have to show you the comment that changed everything. It came from a user named Grad Student. Maya says, "Hey everyone, I'm the cousin OP mentioned. I'm the one who shared the Reddit thread that started this whole thing. I'm currently sitting in my school library crying because I just got off the phone with my mom, Aunt Sarah. I want everyone to know that OP is the bravest person I've ever met. She wasn't just a sister, she was a shield. And to Mark, if you're reading this, stay away from my family. We have the camera footage of you at the college. Don't test us." Another user replied, "Maya, legend for sending that link. You literally saved 4 lives." A final commenter said, "I've been following this since the first Found My GED book post. This needs to be a documentary. The way the brothers showed up, literal chills." And so here's the update. It's been 2 years since I walked out of my parents' house with nothing but an overnight bag and a dream of finishing high school. If you told me then where we'd be now, I wouldn't have believed you. The mess ended in a courtroom. It turns out once my mother was out from under my father's roof and in a house where people actually listened to her, the spell broke completely. She filed for divorce 6 months ago. It was ugly. My father tried to use the church elders to pressure her, but my brothers, Liam and Ethan, hired her the best lawyers in the state. They made it very clear. If he fought the divorce or for custody, they would testify about the educational neglect and the fire pit incident. The divorce decree is a work of art. To keep the peace and to prevent a total war over state versus homeschooling, my brothers and Aunt Sarah helped negotiate a middle ground. My brothers live with Mom now in a small sunny townhouse near Aunt Sarah. Per the court order, they are enrolled in an online homeschool program. No more unschooling. No more living off the land. They have real teachers, real deadlines, and a real curriculum that they actually enjoy. And the best part? My mom is back to being the woman from the Science Museum photos. Every Friday, she takes the boys to the city for the museum or the planetarium. On Wednesdays, they go back to the same arts co-op we used to attend when I was little. She isn't distraught anymore. She isn't a helpmeet. She's a mom. As for me, I didn't just pass my GED. I finished my first year of community college with a 4.0 GPA. I'm currently sitting in my own small apartment, paid for by my part-time job I got at the community theater. Last week, I had a sibling dinner. It was me, Liam, Ethan, and my 3 younger boys. We ate pizza and played board games. My now 12-year-old brother Caleb leaned over and showed me his latest report card. He got a B in math. He looked at me and said, "I'm catching up to you, sis." I saw my father once, at a distance, at a grocery store. He looked older. He looked lonely. He was with Mark, who still looks like he's waiting for a life that's never going to happen. I didn't hide. I didn't look at my shoes. I just kept walking. My father thought that by burning my rabbit and my books, he could stop my future. But you can't burn the truth once it's out. And the truth is, we weren't a godly unit. We were just people waiting for someone to give us permission to leave. And I'm glad I was the one who gave that permission. We did hear from Anna again another year later. Hey everyone. It's been exactly 3 years since my first post on the advice subreddit. My life looks nothing like it did back then. To celebrate my impending graduation from community college, I'm going to do a Q&A. You guys sent in so many questions. Let's dive in. Question 1. Whatever happened to the church your family belonged to? This is a big one. After my story went viral and the aunts and uncles left, a light was finally shone on the leadership there. When the state got involved with my brothers, it forced a lot of other families to look at their own homeschooling situations. Several families realized their children were also years behind. The church didn't disappear, but it's a shadow of what it was. The elder who gave my parents the worst advice actually stepped down after his own daughter reached out to me for help getting her GED. It turns out the truth is contagious. Question 2. Did Mark ever try to contact you again? Only once. He sent a long, rambling email about how I was missing out on a little piece. I didn't reply, I just blocked him. The update there is that he's already moved on. He found a godly wife from a similar congregation 2 towns over. She's 19. It makes my skin crawl to think about it. But it also solidifies that I wasn't a person to him. I was a slot in his life plan. I'm just grateful that slot is empty for me now. I hope she finds her own Aunt Sarah one day. Question 3. What's your favorite college class so far? Theater history. I'm actually working in the costume shop for my work study. It's funny, all those years of being forced to sew modest skirts means I'm actually a pro with a sewing machine. Only now I'm using those skills to make Shakespearean gowns and 1920s flapper dresses. I'm turning a chore into a career. Question 4. How is your mom doing? Is it awkward between you two? It's a work in progress. We go to family therapy once a week. She's learning how to be an individual for the first time since she was 20. Sometimes she still slips into that guilt trip mode. But then we go to a science museum Friday, and she sees the boys thriving, and she snaps out of it. She told me recently that her favorite part of the day is Friday night silence. No one is yelling. No one is demanding that she be a virtuous servant. She's just a woman reading a book on her own porch. Question 5. Are you dating anyone? I am, and it's very new. He's in my biology lab. He's the first person I've ever met who likes my colorful leggings and doesn't think my education is a threat to his ego. He actually tutored me through a rough patch in lab report writing. Imagine that, a man who wants me to be smarter, not quieter. So, 3 years ago, I thought my life was over because Dad caught me with a book. I thought I had to choose between family and my brain. But I've learned that a family that demands you stop thinking isn't a family. It's a cage to everyone still in their own living room, staring at a book they're afraid to open. The world is so much bigger than the one they built for you. This is where our journey ends. Thanks for being part of it. This is OP, Anna, signing off. I have an application to complete for State College.